All right, good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
Hi, Charlie.
How you doing?
Didn't we all just leave here?
Talking finance, talking budget.
Yeah.
I got nothing this morning.
You got nothing?
Just budget.
Okay.
I think we're in a good start. We got a few notes. I'm down from like 150 sticky notes to 3, so.
Good, good. I have some.
Oh yeah, that's and more. Bring it on. It's been a great council. I think we established a good relationship last year in this process. And yeah, let's dial it in the next 5 weeks here, and let's get back to the regular business of executing what's on FY25's budget and starting to prep for FY26 budget. I think I have a strategy, just kind of discussion for Monday. And I've talked to a couple counselors on. I want to start with Monday. Like, what are people's ideas of strategy? I've had a few fits and starts with this. Some people like category more of a work plan. Here's what we want to do over the next year. Let's kind of align those principles. Also, counsel. Hey, I want to do this. I want to do this. I want to do this. I kind of have my notes. I keep track of those. I think I have some alignment on things like short-term rental registration, which we talked about last year. The inventory of a lot of like our housing assets and looking at those in the capital improvement planning process. Recreational cannabis, some other pieces, like let's get them on a timeline, but then there's some other pieces on just, more broader strategic things like urban development that we talked a little bit about last night too, and the courthouse project, it's one we're likely to move forward. What are the kind of bigger items, and then also what we want to say no to, and I think we have 300 items in that comp plan, and talked to Sue Lessard. Her strat planning with councils has been kind of, she's done the multiple weekend schedules, visioning sessions, this and that, but, she's really kind of settled on running tracker, an Excel sheet of every year coming back to council. Here's the things that we accomplished this year that we set out to do. Here's the things that were in our backlog from last year. Here's new things, like let's commit to these 7 to 8 things that are bigger strategic priorities and move forward.
And Charlie, I would just add, for the other things, it's not no, it's just not yet.
Not yet. Or who else? Who could we activate to help on
that's-
this work? Too?
Yeah, I like that.
So, yeah,
Cool.
Excellent.
that's it.
I believe Nate is up. Good morning.
Hey, how are you guys?
Fabulous.
Welcome to Big Finance Friday.
Thank you.
So I think you guys all have papers in front of you showing just where we're at year to date, obviously through February 28th, 2025. Nothing big to point out, obviously. But I do want to talk about a couple big picture things. We did have auditors in office in City Hall yesterday and on Wednesday. They were having some slight issues with Cassell and the migration piece, which is going to be a big piece that we have to tackle here. I'm going to reach out to Cassell, see what we can do. Like we said from the get-go, it kind of wasn't ideal that we switched from Munis to Cassell, especially mid-fiscal year, which has caused some issues with them. They obviously have no prior background in Cassell, so it's hard for them to read the reports, understand what's going on, and it's kind of frustrating, to be honest with you. But I think hopefully I can reach out to Chase at Cassell today or someone from Cassell and kind of navigate them with the help of RHR and get everything they need so we can get this audit complete, because I know that's very important. Obviously having that audit and the reconciliations is, but just so you know.
Oh,
Sorry, Nate, you froze in case you're still talking and you can hear me. I'll let you know when you're back. Oh, you're back.
Yes.
You're good.
I'm back. Sorry. You guys got all blurry. No, but just so you know, right now in the bank account sitting just over $9 million. Looking back at the previous 4 years, I can read them all off, but it looks like average we're about 7.2 million. So definitely have more money on hand than in previous years. Like I said, that's not a great way to judge where we're at, but until we get those audited financials, finish all the recs and everything, I think that's the best way we can view kind of where we're sitting at financially. But I feel like with everything going on, budget books, like I said, we had the first meeting last night. It's great to be in this position in March and not in May. Obviously, we can definitely make better financial decisions for the city and moving forward. So, like I said, the goal now is, now the budget book's done, let's get this audit done with Ashley and the help of the team. That's going to be our main focus. So, like I said, we can have obviously 100%, clean financials. Everything's crystal clear. Everyone knows what's going on, and it just helps us make better decisions for the future. So, anyone have any questions or anything?
I have two questions. One, we're $2 million ahead of last year. Are we still $2 million more in debt with our credit line than we were last year? Is that still that balance?
Yeah, that's still that
Okay.
balance. Yes, sir.
Okay, and the second question is, under revenue from taxation, July to February actual and the FY '25 budget, the number is the same? That can't be true, is that?
Where are you looking at?
What lines?
Oh, never mind.
I'm sorry, 40200.
Yeah, I'll have to look at that and see why that's pulling exactly the amount.
That's taxation, that's the commitment. That's where it gets posted too, so that's how much we needed to collect for. So when you post the tax bills, it goes all to that revenue piece.
On an accrual basis, then? That's not a cash basis, that's an accrual basis.
Nope, that should be, it posts at one time, so.
Yeah, that's a
Accrual by-
one-time post at the beginning.
Right,
And it-
when it's invoiced or not?
Right, so everything's invoiced at one time.
Right, so this is, so what you're saying in this column then is that you have invoiced the total budget, but you haven't collected the total budget.
Yeah, and Steve, this is
Yeah,
something
'cause
that
that-
confused me
Because
last
those top
year.
two,
That's the way they do
sorry, the
municipal
top two
budget.
lines are
They
gonna
count it
show what's,
as an actual, like, as upon invoice, so it's like, this
It's
is.
an
the
accrual basis, I get it.
Yeah.
In the private industry, it's accrual. If you invoice it, it's yours, even if you don't have the cash.
Yeah, So-
Correct.
Yeah.
the
Yes,
tax
that is it.
reconcile and kind of where we're at there.
Yeah.
could be different.
I just never caught that before, that it was the same. I thought actuals would,
And if
so
you
it's
go up to the-
actually, it's actual invoicing.
And if you go up to the top line, right, so basically that number kind of tracks the two tops, I believe, so that's your actual.
Gotcha, okay.
And
With you.
then those two numbers, correct,
Right,
this is
yep.
what we've
Those are
actually
your actual-
collected.
Yep, okay.
That's the AR.
yeah.
Gotcha.
Those two numbers, like I said, and obviously the top one, we're at 58%, through the fiscal year, which is a little low, but obviously the tax bill is being due this month. That's why we're starting to see those come in. So hopefully next month when we look at that, obviously we're tracking a lot better than the 58%.
It's not,
And to your point.
taxes were only due this week, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And to your point though, Steve, because they're due and they're coming in, like, let's clear the decks on that tan and, we start talking about that cash on hand piece too, because it's so.
Yeah, because I, 9 million, you're 2 million better off, but we have 2 million
Yeah.
out on quote-unquote credit line in my
We made
world.
it, to the next,
Yeah.
big infusion of,
Yep.
big tranche.
Yep.
We're clear, we're clear on that. We shouldn't have any big spend, so I think Nate, Ashley and I will talk a little bit later about that. Yeah, and it's one of the nice things about being in a better budget process, being in the system, having Nate and Ashley here for a little over a year now. In Ashley's case, Nate just a little over a year, and keeping this, like, I think, talk to you and Sue about, just once you've been through a couple cycles like that, it's just so predictable on when the money comes in, when the money comes out, and how you do kind of all your cash management, so.
You will have your debt service payments that are due April 1st, so you'll have, that's probably $1 million, $2 million, something like that, so.
Yeah.
And isn't there like a big time of year for car registrations or that type of thing, or is that?
June is usually the time when we're getting a lot of money in for,
June's
at least
that-
that's been the,
Mine is due, so you'll be having that coming in.
there we go.
And my dog registration, I'm late on that, so.
And there is data
That'll make a big
viz
difference.
capabilities in here on the revenue side. I've been really looking forward to getting through a full fiscal year on that, so then we can see the, a full year of revenue, like, accruals and spending accruals. And then next year, we can kind of plug those things in and start seeing how our lines are tracking and see if there's aberrations in the data that like, wait a second, why haven't we gotten this big tranche? Oh, we're about, debt service is gonna hit here, this is gonna hit here, so.
Charlie, I've got just one question for either you or Nate. First page, second from the bottom, voluntary contributions. At first, I thought that was pilot, but that's above.
That's Jack's, that's all Jack's, that 53,000.
So it is payment in lieu of taxes, just a different line item?
Yeah, folks, almost nobody likes to pay a pilot. It's interesting. They call it something else. Same thing with Maine Maritime Academy and Castine. It's a pilot, but they don't like to call it a pilot. I don't know if their lawyers tell them not to do that or something.
Interesting that number is bigger than the pilot number, so. And is that just Jack's or others?
I think it's just Jack's.
Okay,
I think it's just Jackson, that line.
thanks.
I have a few questions. Fire department, looks like they're kind of blowing a hole in their overtime.
Yeah, they've had to.
Where are you?
I don't, those pages are not numbered, Steve.
I can count.
1, 2,
Out in the middle.
3, 4, fifth page on the back side, fire
Thank you.
department.
Yeah,
Yeah, and then,
I know a lot.
oh, go ahead, and I was just gonna
I know a
say,
lot of that's due to the paychecks, the bridge between paychecks and going into the Cassell system. That's one area, actually, I was talking to Scott and to Carrie a couple weeks ago, because I guess they do all their time sheets on paper still, handed to HR. So with police department, I can go in and do the journal entries to probably account for the issues that we have in paychecks. With fire department, I don't have that luxury because theirs is not tracked through paychecks. So you'll see some of the overtime lines are a lot higher, but their payroll full-time might be a little bit lower because of that.
okay, so that's more of just an accounting issue, it's not a spending issue, okay?
Yeah, well, no,
It is.
no, they've got a ton of overtime. They had some, I think, sicknesses or an injury, and they're operating a lot of shifts with the ambulatory piece. I think, I've asked Scott and our new deputy chief Tyler, and to kind of, they had a big request for a part-time to kind of help reduce the overtime this next year. I wasn't quite comfortable with moving forward. I think it was a $264,000 additional request just to get a little bit dialed into costs and overtime and staffing. They asked for 1.5 firefighters, which was a previous councils had said, yeah, we'll do 1.5 a year until we're at full shifts there. I pulled back to just one a year. I'm also not counting 0.5s anymore. If you want to budget for it, you're asking for 2 firefighters, you're asking for 2 employees in other areas. You might be budgeting for 1.5 and do that budget, but you're committing to the next year to that person being in it.
So that's if the .5 is a part-time person versus hiring full-time January.
Yeah, if they want to do something like that, and kind of but I need a lot more of a broader presentation
Yeah.
for the details. Plus, it's our biggest, and we did the cost center breakdowns yesterday. That's the biggest as a percent, and almost as a single dollar figure. I think fire is at. Yeah, you're at 1.3 million in FY 2020, and you're around 3 million at the departmental last level now. So that's a pretty substantial jump.
I'm just want to throw something out, and I don't know, it doesn't change our effect financially, but somewhere in the background since I've been here, there was some grant money for 3 positions, and as those fell off, the city, it's natural that you never get rid of the 3 positions that were granted up front, and I wonder if that number may be from that previous decision.
Safer grants, I
either-
think they were called.
Well, I don't know what it was called, but I
I'm
remember.
pretty sure we're still getting those, and they could fall off at some point. But again, that's why I asked the fire department, like, hey, we committed to this ambulance. It's obviously health and safety. It's really, really important. There's some big overtime costs. We want to keep investing in the fire department, but these costs are so large. To your point, Steve, the safer grants, Medicare reimbursement, the actuals, I think we budgeted 25,000 a year for the last few years. I think there's, I don't think there's any actuals in there this year, and it was like $1,200 last year.
$1,200, yeah.
So those aren't coming in quite as big as previous years. There's been, I think there was conversation about their strategic planning on potentially adding another ambulance and a different, so these are gonna be some, that could be more in the capital planning process too, on how we consider a lot of those pieces, but, if the ambulatory service at fire department, we're already seeing a pretty sizable increase in cost. I think they're last and next Thursday, and we might want to, not that we want to fast track any other departments, but let's go to where the money is. Let's not spend, no offense to yesterday, but the animal control fees and the $50, like let's try and dial
Can I
those in.
just say that clarifying questions have value?
They do.
I know it's a small dollar value, but for us to understand the budget, I need to understand how it fits together. So it's twice you've mentioned it in 12 hours.
100%, 100%, but we can also clarify, Ashley, let's get back to you, because I want to spend a lot of time on that,
fine.
where the huge amount of money is, and time is limited here. There's sometimes that feels like we don't, we do kind of get through some of the timing issues on that, and then we brush over.
So
the
can you
buildings.
rearrange the budget for the next budget workshop and just put fire at the top? Because I noticed last night that it was some of the basic simple, and then some of the hardier discussions were towards the end where everybody's starting to fade, so.
Yeah, we could do
Could I-
that this time.
Could I just speak to that a little bit? I understand you're talking about each individual block of time in your conversation, but I really like how it was arranged that last night was a warm-up for the bigger nights ahead.
Yeah, that was intentional. We gave the, that was close to 3 hours. And granted, last year too, you guys had to do it twice, almost 3 times, because those were so much more intense.
Not just us, everybody in finance.
Yeah, so let me think about that. We could bring fire to the front end, to your
Just
point, Nancy.
each night, the one where you want us to focus should be at the top when we're ready to roll.
While we're freshest and
Yeah,
really get in there.
and
So
most curious, perhaps.
I was curious, because, yeah, that's my concern, and it's why my frustration sometimes, I'm like, let's keep this moving. Ashley, note it, we'll get back to you, because I don't want to kind of get to the end and be like, I've seen this in council meetings too, it's like, okay, we got to get out of here, everybody's burned. So that's a good structural change. Or maybe maybe one more week of splitting them up, not doing so many per night, and trying to be cognizant of that. So we'll make some notes there.
I'd rather see reordering than adding another, see if we can do it, get it done that way.
Okay.
Nancy,
What?
I'm with you.
Are you voting in favor of
Can we
my
touch shoulders
suggestion?
too? Okay, all right.
We're good.
It's unusual.
Yeah, we'll make sure the fire department's keyed up to talk about
Okay.
just that payroll tracking, to your point on seeing that overages, how much of that is based on the Cassell issues, connection to paychecks, and then how much is, some of the things, I'm pretty sure I've talked to Scott about this, that they've had some issues, police department too, they had that was more on, I think, paternity leave, I think they had 2 paternity leaves this cycle, that caused some additional overtime pieces, but I think in the fire department, it was more of a sickness or injury situation that did cause some increased overtime, so, yeah.
Any more questions?
That was my question.
I have a couple more things that I saw, and I've already gone over a couple things with Ashley, but under the solid waste, I don't know what page this is.
All right, find you.
It's a few pages after. So the MSW collections at almost 90%, but your waste disposal's only at 14%. I'm just wondering if those invoices that are being not coded correctly.
Yeah, I mean, definitely looks like you're probably correct on that, and I can double check.
Solid waste, Tammy, which?
Solid waste, so, 10,340, 51340. Is that like 229,000 and then, you there yet? Sorry.
No, sorry, 1040, 390.
51345.
sorry. This one's an important one for me.
And then the 53165, it's really low. I just wonder if those bills aren't being separated.
And then
correctly.
6.5?
6.5, yep.
Bottom one, Charlie. Would it be possible to get page numbers on the printout for these next
Yeah,
month?
I think I want to do page, I think I like page numbers, and I also think it would be nice to have kind of like a departmental total.
Yeah.
Yes,
See
great.
where the budget's at. So I was actually looking at this, this morning, and I was like, it'd probably be nice for you guys just to see the department total, where they're at compared to the budget as well.
Yes, that'd be great.
So these are all ways we can improve for sure.
Yeah, we can look into that. There's some other pieces, like solid waste is, it's, we're carrying a lot on the Ellsworth taxpayer on this one. You know, there's some big increase the last time with Cassell. There wasn't really another option. They were kind of the only game in town. And we'll get a little bit more on that into the budget cycle, but we're carrying a pretty significant negative balance that sort of the whole taxpayer is covering for, you know, those that may or may not use more trash. There's a few changes that I want to make there. I want to increase the trash resident stickers to kind of more truly match costs. I kind of consider it more of an enterprise account, and this is where the fees are. I also want to end the practice of small-scale residential scaling. We have hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of accounts where people go with a truck,
That's great.
and then they pay pennies because they scale it, and you know, and that to me also allows people not to use the sticker process. So we're not collecting nearly as much stickers as we could. In talking to our new solid waste superintendent, he's the head of the solid waste department over there. We just acquired him from Blue Hill. He's incredible. He knows his stuff really, really well. And he's like, yeah, this is not the fact that you allow this kind of small scale scaling is just pennies. And it's just tons and tons of accounts, and folks are just going there, scale, you're off, and they're not using the stickers. So we're losing a fair amount of money in that category. So what do we want to do? We want to increase the stickers? We want to stop this residential scaling? Do we want to just keep letting the whole taxpayer foot the bill on that increase? There's a couple more years left in the contract. Do we want to start thinking about the cost difference between buying one trash truck and adding another employee in Public Works, which could potentially be a lot cheaper than the Cassell? If we don't, then we're going to be subject to whatever Cassell tax increase or fee increase they want to give us. So I want to also start providing options so that when we go into that negotiation, if they're the only bidder again, it's not, well, whatever they want to charge us, we have to take, or we have to stop collection, that we actually at least, you know, have to create our own alternative option. I wish we were in a different scenario where we could have 2 or 3 bidders and have them, but if, you know, I feel like with that big increase last year, if they're going to do another big increase, we need to have a backup option so we stop losing so much money in this category.
And I don't know if another alternative is if process improvement would somehow do it, but I did the scaling once, and my bill was $1.20, and I couldn't pay there. I had to send a check. It cost me, it must have cost the city $50 to process my $1.20
Yeah, and they
for
can,
scaling, and it's like, this makes no sense.
they'll
at
talk
all.
about more.
So-
They have, a lot of people set up an account. So you set up an account, and even if you don't pay your account, it's like, you know, a tiny little interest rate, so.
Yeah.
I didn't know you could do that. I always filled
I
my
don't
bags, put
recommend
my
it.
stickers on, and then just went and threw it in the thing.
Yeah, and that's, I think, what we'd like to just, you can do
Yeah.
that. If you have 1,000 pounds of trash, absolutely. You know,
Yeah.
we'll scale you, we'll pull you through, but, you know, you're not, you can't just come with a pickup truck
Household
and some loose
$1.20,
stuff
yeah.
and $1.20 in trash, like, we're losing a ton of money on that.
One thing I might throw out about that is, let's not make everybody bag their trash. There's a lot of household trash that is impossible to bag. Maybe the solution is to raise the scale rate so the consumer has the option, but they're more balanced.
Yeah, that's another option we could pursue. Well, one thing is like for kind of, you know, trash like that, you just, like, there's the state, there's kind of another area next to our transportation.
Demo debris.
Yeah, the debris area, so I'd put, a lot of that's in that category. Most of the household trash you should be able to bag, unless it's debris, which you'd want to go to the other one. But to your point, Steve, maybe we do, it's like a $40 minimum. If you want to have the convenience of going in there and just having a truck bed full of stuff that you didn't have to bag and do yourself.
Yeah, because we created the hole, and it's our job to plug the hole. And I don't mean to be mean, but the last thing I want to do, I don't use the service, but the last thing that I want to do is, I can see now somebody trying to put something in a bag that doesn't fit, and it's just a mess. And it's a lot of extra work, whereas the money, if you weigh it and there's a balance there, then, I don't know. It just, we bought scales for $132,000. I don't want to prevent people from using them.
Yeah, that's,
Like, you know, I mean, come on,
we'll talk more, and this is one where I want to talk a lot more about it. This is one where we got to spend some good time on, because to your point, there is a nice convenience to it. But we're losing it, and I wouldn't put it all necessarily like we in some ways it's a part of we're living in rural America where there's a single, we're a city in very rural America where there's only a single, in other bigger cities where there's other trash options, they can create competition, and so the cost overruns here, and the fact that Mr. and Mrs. Ellsworth are having to pay a lot more to subsidize that huge increase, and for the folks that are that are using more trash, they're getting a very subsidized rate on that trash. So how do you so yeah, if we want to keep the convenience, is it a $40 minimum?
whatever it might be.
That might be it to kind of keep, so that we're not having one now, which is, in our solid waste person can talk more about it, which I was like, let's raise the sticker fee to blank, blank, blank. He's like, well, you could do that to start causing, he's like, but he thinks you might get more sticker use by just ending this sort of, he's like, that's where we're losing a lot of the money and people aren't putting stickers and we're just not seeing revenue come in. And you're seeing it, multiple hundreds of thousands of dollars that we're not getting in sticker revenue and scale revenue. So then Mr. and Mrs. Ellsworth is kind of covering the difference on that. So do we want to just keep providing that service and letting Mr. and Mrs. Ellsworth kind of cover the rest of the people that aren't using as much trash, or kind of covering it for those that are using that system more at a cheap rate? Or do we want to right-size the sticker price and change that, which is going to affect people badly that are, using a lot of trash and getting a really good rate $1 for, so it's not going to make everybody happy on this one. But right now it's kind of getting just snuck in there.
I think, don't hold me to this, I don't want to speak for you, Charlie, but I think you missed Nancy's point, that whatever you do, we ought to be able to collect the money
Faster.
there.
Yeah.
Not create an accounts receivable for, and that was your point, correct?
One of the suggestions was,
Right.
process improvement.
And-
If I had
and-
an account and I could
I
just.
thought you missed it, I might be wrong. but-
No, it was noted 100% on that one. I guess my point back, it wasn't necessarily, but was from what I'd heard previously was that a lot of people just kind of have this, like, they establish an account.
They have to.
Did you have to establish an account? That's why maybe
So can I just
Yeah.
chime in here? So the reason why we typically didn't accept cash for being weighed on the scales was because there's control issues handling cash at the transfer station, and that's a big
Oh, interesting.
risk at transfer stations. So that's why we decided to just go ahead and bill the people. On the other side of that, you have some collection issues. If they're not paying it, the interest is low. So maybe if we have a good system that can really track those invoices and match the cash back, we might be able to do it. But just for accounting, they would definitely have to keep an eye on that for control purposes.
And to your point, Nancy, maybe there's like a system, and yours, Tammy, maybe there's a system, yeah, because you wouldn't want to just have a bunch of cash there and kind of doing it. A credit card system we could kind of figure out, but maybe it could be, like, the intent for the scales is for larger scale folks to go in there over a certain poundage threshold, and that's why you got to establish an account, you're a commercial type user for the scale. And we either end the scale practice for smaller ones, but to your point, Steve, some people it's just easier. Maybe there's like a new sticker that's like a $40 sticker. You got to pick it up over here, and if you want to use the scale to make it easy, pick up a couple of these $40 stickers and it has to be less than this amount of pounds. I don't know. I'm just spitballing now, and I'm sure the solid waste folks would be like, "That's a terrible idea."
Well, a quick idea, and I know that's not the venue here to talk about it, but a quick idea that is easy to solve, I would assume, would be to take a day and measure 25 bags of trash and measure the scale of it and estimate that, and you could get a balance to charge people fairly by doing that one day
Yeah.
average, if you will.
And I think it's,
And to your point, and I think it fits in with Tammy, is that whatever you raise that to, it's gonna create less cash income because it's a bigger number.
yeah. Yeah, and I think there's, in some ways, I think there's just a guidepost, like I put it in here, like, let's raise $100,000 more revenue, and change the system. I don't think it's gonna be, I put 200,000 more, I was like, let's get rid of this negative balance that we're putting, it should be the trash users have to pay the amount of trash, treating it like enterprise water, wastewater, but,
So, and that's what it was set up to be. So my guess is that the tipping fee has not been raised in years, so maybe even a decade. So that needs to be looked at.
Yep.
The other thing is Ellsworth is unique that we have a transfer station and we have curbside pickup, which is driving the cost of our transfer station and the solid waste budget is because we have two things. It's been looked at multiple times of closing one, just doing one of them, but there was, the feedback from the community is they really do like having that, but might be something we need to take a look at as well.
yeah, and you do like the high level math, which I've done with Public Works already, like, we should be able to do it for much cheaper. It's twice a week, get the trash truck, even with the debt service on that, you're looking at 150,000 to 200,000, even right now, current costs, that we could do it cheaper with our own Public Works crews, and staffing it there and keeping the curbside trash pickup.
Oh, and the other thing is, we're such a large community area-wise, that's why it costs so much for curbside pickup as well.
And last time around, they just said, hey, here's the new price, and it's
Yep.
like, well, what are we gonna
Nobody
do?
else wants it.
My understanding is they don't offer curbside across the city for that reason.
It's, no,
You
we
get
have,
it everywhere.
it's
Okay.
everywhere.
And I'm-
Different day.
And I'm sorry, but I wanna get to Amy,
Yes,
and,
I'm sorry.
and I'm gonna bring solid waste to the front of the, of the budget
Talking
cycle.
trash.
There you go.
Sorry, Amy, we didn't
It was not
expect
a
you.
waste of time.
Nah,
I'm meeting with Charlie after this anyway, so I'm
Okay.
here for a
and I
while.
only have like 15 minutes, I'm so sorry.
No, you're fine, because this morning is just really a quick overview. So the only thing I'm wondering is, we had set this up so that you could see, but then when we did Zoom, I'm not sure you're gonna be able to see it. Now that Zoom is up.
If we do that, can we tilt the
Nate.
screen towards us a bit?
Hi, Nate. I did.
Trying to airplay on my Teams meeting? That doesn't work.
I can share,
Do you have Teams on here?
Am I causing issues back here?
I can share the meeting with you
Always.
and then
See,
you can
if you have
share.
Teams, we could share the meeting, and then you could just share your screen as part of the Teams meeting.
Go right ahead.
Okay, all right, just do it. Yeah, if you want to send her the meeting invite.
Nate, while that's happening, can you just tilt the screen so it's not
Yes.
flat against the
Oh, yeah.
wall?
And I apologize, Nancy, you are right on the animal controls, every of those little line items, we should be able to. For me, there's just a few triggers with accounts,
just
like you
sent
start
that
talking
to
about
her.
Just
leases.
send it? Okay.
Yeah.
All of a sudden, we're
It
like-
usually takes a
But
minute.
twice I got tagged on
There
there,
it
so.
is.
Was that you who mentioned it? I thought
Yes.
I thought it was Tammy, but, well, Tammy was providing all the clarifications
What'd I do?
on the animal control fees,
Oh.
and
Yeah.
you might have mentioned it, but the
Yeah, I was
time was,
thinking-
it's funny how we work with time too.
Well, and it's, yeah. Like I have three
Of course, an update's required.
questions I'll follow up with you later
Yeah.
based on today, but
That's all right, we'll get it.
while we're in a slag here. If I'm wondering, other people might be wondering, and so
I had a-
trying to figure out when to bring things forward and when to I just want to follow up on a couple things.
I had an economics professor who, as an economics professor, is obsessed with ideas of opportunity costs. Like, you're doing one thing, and it seems productive, but however, in the back of, like, there could be something that's more productive, so there's a cost to doing these things.
Right.
And his lectures were
Type in
incredibly
your computer
efficient.
faster, please.
But students would try to get him off track with questions,
We're
and
almost
he
there.
was
I
a
don't think we're gonna be
monster.
too bad here.
He's like, no, not
Take a moment.
productive. talk to my second assistant on this thing, like, that's not, like,
Yeah.
we have this much time in this class.
That's really
We will
funny.
get through these X concepts. I've done this for 22 years. This is lost. He was just, you could just see he was a productivity maximizer.
And he's also
there's-
been working with students for 20 years, so he knows that.
Yeah, he's just like, I've seen this rabbit hole.
Yeah.
You're wrong. Like, talk to this person if you need more explanation.
That's not my intention when I ask clarifying
No, no.
questions.
It might be, but to that point, I'm kind of like that, but it's in my head and I just keep it. But, when we break down, okay, we want to be done by X date time, we have 10, whatever.
Audio,
Thinking about, all right, I want to spend 15 minutes on fire.
Okay, we have to be
Yeah.
let into the
15
meeting.
minutes on
so-
police.
I'm all for that.
And
Yeah.
just, if there's a way, and then at least it's in
Oh,
front of us.
there we go. All
And then
right.
we can be like,
And it sets the expectation for the
Sure.
Sets
presenters.
the
Thanks,
expectation.
Nate.
We used to have this clock that they bought.
very
to
accepting.
Potentially do like 3 minutes for the people up there. That, ended up breaking, but I
computer
had
password,
thought about
please.
trying to get a clock up here and just so people could know, like, hey.
Well, there's a clock right there.
Yeah, but you need the count, I want
You
the
mean a
timer.
stopwatch?
Yeah, it's almost
get
like
that
a-
street light.
I
that's
have
out
to
in the
rejoin
hall.
the meeting 1 second. I'd
That's pretty
updated.
cool.
I'm
That's
not
great.
Just
permission.
like
Maybe it could go
stop,
red.
So you may have to let me in again.
stop, yellow. Well, that's how they do it in court arguments. They do a
You
green,
need me to call school
yellow,
IT?
red, and like
On it.
green. Like
Give 'em a
you
buzz.
argue,
Legislature
and then
has
it
a
goes to,
3-minute
like,
time.
They're all
yellow,
in
and it's like,
professional
like,
development.
okay, I'm almost
They're
done.
developing.
Yeah.
Then, of course,
The whole
you're done.
district is today.
Yeah,
There's ways.
those things are so,
No.
Could you repeat that?
That's why there was
So
no
like the
traffic.
Maine Supreme Court, if you're
Yeah,
in
there's
front
no
of them
school
for
today.
oral argument,
There you
they
go,
have
Ash.
these
I-
three
I
little
was at the red light, I was
light
like,
bulbs,
there's no
green,
traffic.
yellow, red.
That's why.
So when it green's up, it means you know,
Hey, look at
and
that.
you know
There's a
going in,
screen.
I have 15
All right,
minutes,
go to
or
the
10 minutes or whatever.
yellow.
And then,
oh,
Yeah,
oh.
just
and
went
then when
over
it
it.
hits yellow.
I've got that. There we
okay.
go.
Right
Yellow
there's
there.
the yellow.
Yep.
And
And
then-
it's
So you
like
wrap
Joe.
it up.
Yeah, and then.
Thank
Boom.
you.
You're welcome.
And they're just
Yay.
like-
All
It
right,
doesn't matter what you're saying, you just.
Nate
maybe
always
have the
saves
listen
me.
button.
Yeah,
An eject button.
I know.
yeah. Trap
So-
door.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Just this morning, Charlie and I thought it would be good for me to just do a 5 to 10 minute intro, which is what I did with the school board, so that everybody's on the same page of kind of where we're at in the process and what we're looking at for our budget for this year. And for some reason, now my slideshow won't move. Oh, there we go. Okay. So just to kind of talk about, we've changed over the last couple of years our budgeting process in that we're trying not to do everything in silos across the school system to really maximize efficiencies and look at cost savings across the district rather than HCTC, EEMS, technology to kind of integrate everything. So that's been really good over the last couple of years. I've believed it's given us a chance to really look at not only our budget, but also our programming. Really, as you saw a few presentations ago from me, trying to really look at our trends in data, not just from an academic perspective, but also enrollment, and then looking at the subgroups within that data, and looking how those subgroups affect ultimately our budget as well. Trying to keep Finance Committee of City Council and our Finance Committee of the School Board kind of in lockstep so that everybody feels like they've been included in the budget process. And then at the last finance meeting, I showed you kind of a breakdown of our grant funding because that is an important piece of the budget where it's about over $1 million just in federal funding that helps run our budget. So that has been looked at as well. And apparently it's going to take, there we go. So to talk a little bit about our needs in totality, and needs doesn't always equate to cost, okay? So I don't want people to see this list and think, holy crap, what's she doing? But needs are something that really have to be talked about as we build our budget and also think about forward planning for the school department. Probably our biggest goal in this budget is to change the leadership structure of our pre-K to 8 school. That is not because we think that our current people are doing a bad job, but overwhelmingly what we're hearing from the community, including our parents, is that there's not enough communication and that they are frustrated with behaviors kind of driving what happens at our school, okay? And so one of the things we've talked a lot about is how complicated and different schools are right now in comparison to even 5 to 10 years ago. They are very different. And when I really looked back, we used to have 3 schools. You know, we used to have a K2 at the Knowlton School, we had a 3-5 at the Moore, and then we had a middle school. And those 3 schools all had principals, and the middle school had an assistant principal. And when we built the new school, financially, it made sense. We got construction money from the state. It made sense to build one school. But what I will tell you is putting 700 and plus kids, 730 to 780 kids, ranging in ages from pre-K to 8 under one roof is highly complicated. So when you look across the state, there is no school in the state of Maine, other than Ellsworth, that is as big as ours is with that range of age. You have schools of 700 plus, but they're grades 7 and 8, or they're grades K to 3. And so one of the things that we tried to do was have one principal and one assistant principal at one point in that school. We had 2 principals and 1 assistant principal. None of the models have really worked as they should, to be honest with you. It's not enough. And something that I talked about last month is people's expectations of leaders and teachers has come way up here. I don't know why or how it happened. I don't know if it's the immediacy of social media, but people want when they want, and they want it then and there. And my expectation of administrators is not to be sitting at a desk in their office and answering the phone and answering every email that comes in. And they come in hundreds at a time. I want them in the hallways, in the classrooms, dealing with behaviors themselves, working with staff, getting to know students, and building that kind of model. And right now, with 1 principal and 2 assistant principals, we're putting out fires and trying to keep up with things. And I want us on the front end of things and improving our academic data and pushing things forward. So one of the biggest things that I am trying to do in this budget is create 3 pods within our school, which is pre-K to 2, 3 to 5, and 6 to 8. And so what we are looking to do is keep the principal as the overarching visionary person who leads the school pre-K to 8, and then have an assistant principal in each of those pods. That assistant principal would be specialized in that content and age level. They would be responsible for the special ed and 504 administrative meetings, which currently they kind of do sometimes. The behavior and the relationship building of the families at those grade levels, teacher evaluations, they would be much more specialized. So we've tried a variety of models. It's, like I said, my people are burning themselves at both ends of the candles. It's not working. Families still feel like we're not communicating enough, there's not enough transparency. And so really, in examining everything that we do and trying to figure some things out, this is the model that I'm gonna try to capture in this next budget. Behavior is significant. I'm sure you've heard out in the community how challenging behavior has become. Kids are more violent, and there's legislation that you cannot suspend kids under 5th grade. There's a lot of changes that are happening in schools that have really complicated things. And so more and more school departments are working with BCBAs, which is behavioral analysts, who come in and do functional behavior assessments, work with classroom teachers. So we're really looking at how are we going to long-term support our regular ed teachers day-to-day with behavior that is completely different, again, than what they saw even 5 to 10 years ago. Pre-K has been probably one of the most wonderful things I think Ellsworth has done over the last few years. I'm really proud of the support we've got from the city council and from the school board last year to have 2 pre-K classrooms in our school. I think long-term, what we will see is great gains. I mean, we're already seeing, holy cow, some of our pre-K students are already going to be further ahead next year than what they were. So we are looking to expand our pre-K accessibility. As you know, a goal, nationally even, is universal public pre-K for all 4-year-olds. So in this budget, we're trying to expand 2 classrooms to offer it to more families because we are full this year and we are on a wait list. We have just released our lottery for next year and we're already well over enrollment for our current 2 classrooms. So the demand is 100% there.
To make it 4.
We would like to make it 4. The 2 additional classrooms would be off-site because we have no space for them. But that is a typical model for universal pre-K, is to give family options. And so we are currently working on a collaboration with a community partner right now, which isn't public yet, which community partner, so I can't tell you that. But we are working on that, and so the 2 pre-K classrooms would be off-site, but under our pre-K curriculum. Technology, staffing, and equipment, we're working on that as well. Our technology hasn't been upgraded instructionally for a long time in our classrooms. We're behind where we need to be. So we're trying to figure out a long-term solution for that. And like I've talked about in previous years, we have to get on a better cycle for things so that everybody knows what's coming year to year in our plan, much of what you guys are trying to do as well. Gifted and talented, we've talked about for the last couple of years that we currently are understaffed in our gifted and talented department. We have 1 teacher for the entire district. So we're working on trying to accomplish some additional services for that population in this coming budget. This year, we expanded and have a remote learning program for students. So students who can't access coming to school on a daily basis, whether it's because of social emotional or homelessness or economically disadvantaged situations that make it impossible for them to get to school, we have students in the remote learning program and we have a wait list. And what's been great about it is we have kids getting an education who I believe otherwise would have dropped out of school. So we are working on how can we look at what we currently do and expand that, again, without additional cost. Additional administrative assistant support across the district is something that we are looking at. If we can unburden some of our people that are doing a lot of administrative tasks, that would free people up to do some of the other parts of the job that I think are really essential for moving us forward. Facilities is something that I'm really going to dig in with you next Friday about. As you know, in last year's budget, we pulled a lot of facilities projects out of the budget as individual line items and instead did the TELP for the first time. That has been widely successful. We got so much facility work done last summer, probably more than I've seen in a lot of my time being here. And what we are looking to do is pull a lot of the facilities requests out of this FY26 budget as well and do an expansion of the TELP, which helps offset the bottom line to taxpayers in the budget process. So what I would like to do when I come back to you next Friday is show you what TELP 1 looked like, what the payouts show, and then talk to you about what that would mean for FY26 as well, because I think that long-term, that has been a great solution to our budgets and getting us some of our facilities work accomplished in a timely manner. Curriculum evaluation and update, I'm really proud of the work that my team and teachers have done. We had curriculums that had not been looked at in a long time. We've talked about that. I've been transparent about that. We have textbooks that have not been updated in over 7 to 8 years. We have curriculums that haven't been looked at. We are really working hard and have us on a good cycle now to make some of those gains. We made massive gains in literacy and math over the last couple of years. This next budget is going to look at science, science textbooks. In order for our high school to continue offering AP classes, we have to make those updates. We have to make those updates. So we're looking at those cycles and trying to accomplish work on that quickly, but also in a fiscally responsible manner. Transportation is another area that we're working on to try to keep our buses updated. Bus garage, we'll talk about that in a few minutes. And then, of course, for a long time, staff didn't get a lot of high-quality professional learning. So we've really committed the last couple of years to making sure that our staff stays at the cutting edge of professional learning. Things that we need to continue to keep in the forefront that we talk about every year in our budget, but is also part of our long-term planning. Our bus garage lease does expire next spring. We are working with the owners now on whether or not to continue that lease. I think we really need to talk about what to do long-term about our bus garage.
Do you know roughly how much it costs per year on that?
It's $5,500 a month and doesn't include a lot.
And it's just,
The triple net lease,
Huh?
is it a triple net lease where you're paying the taxes and the insurance above that?
No.
55 includes that?
$5,500 does not include taxes. They pay the taxes on the building.
So it does include that?
Yeah. Yes. Yes.
it's all inclusive.
Yes. So that is something we need to talk about long-term. It's something that I'm going to meet with the owners about over the next month. So it's something we've talked about before. It is probably one of the things I get the most emails and calls about, so that you know, and in transparency, and I've brought this up before, people are always asking why our buses are not at Highway. And so that is something I think we need to talk about long-term. Hancock County Technical Center, we will find out this summer if we made the new construction list. Fingers crossed, toes crossed. We've worked really hard as a community for the last couple of years on that application and to build momentum for that. God willing, we'll get state funding to help us build a new Hancock County Technical Center. We are in dire need of it. You all know that. It really limits a lot of what we would like to do for community workforce development, adult education. There's so many things that we're not doing because of the building limitations that we have. And really just long-term, what do we want career technical education programming and adult education programming? How do we want those things to grow? And what are the value added they provide to our community? FY28 is the magic number for when school departments will become responsible for case management of all 3- and 4-year-olds. So Maine is one of the last states in the nation to adopt this model. It's a model that I really do agree with. It is going to frustrate some people that we have to assume that. But I will tell you, the educational gains that I believe we will make long-term will be worth it. And that doesn't mean we have to educate every 3- and 4-year-old. We have to case manage those students and provide FAPE, a free appropriate public education. So we have to help case manage those children and their families. So I don't want people to think we have to figure out schooling for 3- and 4-year-olds. We don't. But it is going to cost. Right now, schools have been invited each fiscal year to join the pilot. I continue to decline. I continue to want other districts to figure out what that's going to look like and cost before we do it. I don't need us to be the guinea pig. I would rather me gather information from communities around us and that are like size and see how they're figuring it out and structuring it. So we have time, but by FY28, we legally have to assume that and meet that legislative call. already talked about, expanded virtual academy, I won't talk about that again. Recruitment and retention of educator workforce.
Could I interrupt you just
Course you
for
can.
one moment?
Of course you can.
As people have other commitments and when
Yes.
they pull out, I still want to hear all this.
Yep.
I want to hear what everyone's got to say. Even if there are other commitments that people have, I still would like to continue this. And so I don't want you to feel rushed.
I'm almost
Okay,
done.
okay.
Yes, promise. Recruitment and retention of educator workforce, that is something that is starting to become the Wild West. Different school districts are opening union contracts and upping pay, because now, when you advertise for an education position, you're lucky if you get an applicant. And it used to be you'd get 40 for a teaching position, and now you're lucky if you get 2 to 3 in some instances. And for leadership, you're lucky if you get 1 or 2. So retention and recruitment of educators is a huge goal and something that we're thinking about systematically moving forward for how we're going to handle that. And then continuing safety preparedness with local law enforcement, but also day-to-day, what does it mean when a child has violent behavior or acts out? How do we prepare our staff and our other students for that? So next Friday, when I come to you, I'm going to show you the facilities stuff, going to give you an update on where we are, and then March 25th is when everybody on the council, that's when my presentation is. April 8th is when the school board votes on the budget. So between March 25th and April 8th, I'll do work based on both boards' feedback on where we think we should be. So even between or after March 25th, if you leave the board presentation and you have questions or suggestions, email them to me, so that on April 8th, when I go to the school board, that keeps us on track for April 21st is when you vote on the budget, so that we meet our timeline for referendum. So it's going to be really critical the next couple of weeks, that questions, if you have things you'd like me to bring specifically to March 25th, I welcome that feedback, so that you have everything, and we'll send everything to you ahead of March 25th so that you can look at stuff and be prepared for that. Questions?
Could we get a copy of that?
Absolutely.
It was a great outline of what you'll be bringing forward, a good way to set the stage.
Yes, absolutely.
Thank you.
Yep.
One question that I have is, do you have a from-the-hip feeling of state and federal funding? What's going away, what's going to burden the local? And I'm not asking you to be committed to that, I'm just,
Yep.
with all this uncertainty, I just have to.
No, I appreciate the question. Hancock County Superintendents met with the Commissioner of Education yesterday. So I would say that we feel confident FY '26 is not going to be affected with the burden of federal money being stripped away from school departments. And I say that with great certainty. I am not worried in light of everything that is going on, even if Department of Education closes tomorrow, okay, with the layoffs. I feel good about not making massive adjustments or stressing everyone out about the FY '26 budget. A lot of the federal funds we receive are congressionally assigned funds. So none of us in our meetings have talked about needing to adjust our budgets for this coming year. Now, for years ahead, that I don't know. But for FY '26, I feel okay. Now, are we going down in some of our title trends for next year? Yes, Title II we have a reduction in. But those ebbs and flows in some of those federal funds is normal. It is not because of everything else going on right now. So I feel okay about that. We're continuing to apply. We have 3 major grants out right now that we've applied for. We're going to continue to apply for those. I'm not super stressed about that right now.
Well, that's good to hear, but I just want to throw out that, you know, things could change tomorrow. and-
Absolutely.
But I'm glad to hear where your feeling is from the hip.
Yes,
Thank you.
you're very welcome.
Thank you, Amy.
You're welcome. I'll see you.
See you
Next
next
Friday.
week. Yeah,
Yes, I'll actually send the presentation.
thank you.
Sorry.
Any, I realize you guys have to go, that's fine, but I'd like to hear from anything I can learn from the crowd, if you plan to speak.
Anything, Jared? Ray?
No? Mr. Williams. See you, Patrick. Yeah.
See you, Patrick.
I'm not trying to keep
Raymond-
everybody, I want to take in
Raymond
all-
Williams, 56 Hancock Street. Just a couple things. The first point is, I feel very strongly that hopefully, before you enact the budget, including the school budget, for fiscal year 26, oh wait, what the heck, 26, you need to have completed the audit for fiscal year '24. I think that is extremely important, and I don't know it sounded last fall that things were going well, but now it's sounding like things aren't going so well. But I think you need to know those figures.
Yeah, I think
For both.
everything's
And,
been submitted to
that-
auditors. It was done in December. We caught up on 2 years' audits previously. They're having some issues with the Cassell. Again, that was before we were here, as Nate mentioned. That kind of mid-year technology switch, I think, has given some trouble to the auditors in this piece. But I think we should be done pretty soon, right, Nate?
Okay, now.
Mr. Williams, can I chime in really quick, Mr. Williams?
Oh, yes.
Absolutely, I agree with you 100%. And back in October, when we got the list from the auditor, we sent everything that they had requested, so we thought we were good. The issues that I had were when they showed up on Wednesday here at City Hall, there was a whole new list that they never approached us about. And the issues that they're having is, like I said, with the Cassell migration. But I agree 100% with you that, to me, having an audited financials are the only way you can have a clear picture of what's going on. So I'm with you 100%, and that's our goal.
Yeah, and the 2024, as I mentioned yesterday in the budget, it's just really a critical one because it kind of bridges the bad data year gaps when they were, doing more just in Excel and, things weren't tracking the actuals in real time. It wasn't built in the software system. So for me, there's still a gap between FY23 audit and what I can see there in cost centers, and then FY25 when we're managing within the system. So super important.
Could I interrupt that just 1 second? I understand the problems that have come up, but could we answer Mr. Williams' question with an estimate? That what you're seeing is, what I'm hearing from this is that we're gonna have to pass a budget without an audited financial. Is that reality?
I don't know if it's reality, I'll be honest with you. I think the problem is, if you want my honest assessment, I think
do.
RHR as an auditing firm they have a lot of clients. And the issue was when they showed up, like Ashley and I were discussing earlier this week, is had we known about this stuff even a week ago, we could have had everything prepared for them. When they showed up, obviously we were in the middle of doing the budget book, which it's no excuse, but that was our main priority, was getting that ready last night. So I reached out to Cassell actually this morning before our meeting, and I told them the concerns that the auditors had. My goal is to get everyone on the same page and to get everything they need, because like I said, my goal is to get it done ASAP. I would love to have a great time frame for you, but I feel like we're only at the pace of what RHR can do for us.
What I'm hearing.
If we put them against the corner and say we need stuff ASAP, then that's all we can do.
Okay, so what I'm hearing is it's not gonna be done in reality. Chances are that it won't be done before we pass a budget. I'm hearing that, but I'm reading between the lines here a little bit. And fast forward, if that happens this year, to Mr. Williams' point, which I believe it will happen because every year I've been here, we keep, and I'm not blaming anybody, but the audit process is always a moving target. So, say that happens this year, is there things we can do to make that not happen next year?
Yeah, the Cassell, we have one more year left on RHR, right? So we're in a 5-year contract with them on our audits. And let's also take a bit of a step back too we caught up on 3 years audits when we were here. I kept hearing that too, and I know it's probably, for you, it's even more pressing, Steve, and Ray, you heard it. So we caught up on those 3 through 2023. As Nate mentioned, I think in December, they were all submitted on the things that were on the auditor's list. So that was a couple months ago now, 2.5 months ago. So now, to RHR's credit, the Cassell, we were the first in Maine to do that type piece. It is March still. We have April. I think you saw Amy's timeline there, so it's April. Something is the typical timeframe for that audit, or this year. So we're fast tracking the city side of the budget. So we're actually a couple months earlier than and a lot of other cities and towns don't do this. They have until, what is it there? I just looked at one that has a May submission from Brewer with the city manager's recommendation for the budget. It's in May. We just did it in March 12th. So there is usually, if we had a track time, we didn't have this other piece, we'd have a little more time. And that being said, Steve, I don't think, we're gonna push like hell to get this audit in before, April 10th, April 15th.
I understand what I'm hearing. I just want to answer the man's question, and I'm going to go out on the line and say this. This budget is going to get passed, my guess is, and it's a guess, without audited financials, to answer your question, Mr. Williams. Maybe I'm wrong, but let's be blunt and answer your question.
Thank you. I think I knew what the answer was, given the time frame that they're in now, but I'm glad to know that the problem this time around is not necessarily with the city of Ellsworth. And I've made some observations in past years, and I'm still open, and I may be appearing before you again about the auditing issue and who the auditor is, or should be, or shouldn't be. The other thing is, try to be very brief. I've gone through the list of items that you are going to be studying it and handling it, the next things, and I thought it would be one department I thought would be on last night, and it wasn't, and I don't see it listed anywhere, and I think you need to list it, and it's the legislative department. I think you have got to consider at least increasing the amount proposed in the budget to cover what is in section 2.12 under stipend of the Ellsworth City Council, meaning basically increasing the figure of 14.5 to 18,850, which will cover the increases that have been available at the beginning of January 1st of each year since January 1st, 2012, to make it large. And why I'm saying this is, at the organizational meeting in November for the last 2 years anyway, and maybe even, I think, longer, 3 or 4, there has always been this discussion when you get to the council voting for the resolution of the amount of the salary, of the stipend, which is $2,500 for the chair and $2,000 for each other member, and which has been what it has been for quite a while. And I think maybe since this charter was adopted in 2011, which has a provision that says the stipend maximum will be increased annually by $50 and $40 respectively beginning January 1, 2012. So I have just figured out that by January 1, 2025, which will be the year that you're voting, that the council, whoever is on it, in November of this year at the organizational meeting, could be voting for up to a maximum of $3,250 for the chair and, let me see, $2,600 for the other members. And I think that that's the council that should vote to do it. And I think one of the reluctant things is, in the past years, is, well, what you have in the budget is this figure, and we shouldn't go over that. So I'm suggesting that maybe you should increase the budget amount, the maximum, and then leave it up to the council that takes office in November what they want to do. And I realize, I know there's at least one member on this council that I have a feeling might be not inclined to vote to increase it. I could be wrong, but I think it's a decision to be made by the council coming in, but you've got to have the money in the budget available at the time. So that's the only reason I'm suggesting doing it. I'm not suggesting that necessarily it should be increased, although it probably may make sense, because I can tell you that the members of the city council are a lot busier and do a lot more than the city council from 1984 to 92 had to do. So,
Ray, I mentioned last night, we put the budget online in the budget book. We tried to be transparent as possible, put a printed one out here as well. But I mentioned, for crowdsourcing, a lot of good comments from leaders here. I think I had kind of you in mind on this. I know last year's cycle, we had some great discussions that really helped me. That's another great one. I can maybe bring that into my city manager presentation next week. I know we did discuss that at the organizational meeting, but I'll double check your math, Ray. I think you're one of the few people I think that I would almost just put it right in there. But I think that's a very reasonable request. I think it's also in line with what we discussed at the last meeting.
Could I speak to that just a little bit? And when I first got elected, I was handed a check, and I'm like, I don't want the check. And they said, you have to take the check. And I don't want the check. Well, you have to take the check. And I was brand new, and I didn't know what to do. I give mine each year to the library, is what I do, okay? I'm not suggesting other people do that. But one of the things that I might add is that if we did that, what Ray is suggesting, maybe we clarify if a counselor has to accept it. I'd be more inclined to vote for the increase if I didn't have to accept the check. And I don't know if I was told that through law, through charter, or through opinion. But that's what happened to me. And I have always given mine to my library. And so I'd be more inclined to support it if I didn't have to take anything.
You don't have to accept it. We'll have it as a liability because you can't accept it. We can't.
Yeah, I don't know the rules.
Just
and
look into that,
regulations
if you
around
would,
that.
because I think that I would support it if I didn't have to accept any money. And I was told when I got here that you have to accept the check. And it may have been the opinion of the person handing it out, I don't know. I was brand new and I'm like, okay.
Nobody has to accept a check. You don't have to cash a check. We have to probably disperse or put a liability on it because any counselor could decide they want it. And I don't know if we.
Just a thought, because it was driven down my throat, and it maybe was a good thing because I walked across the street and gave it to the library. I don't know, but just room for conversation there.
Well, and just to add to the conversation, I appreciate you bringing it up. It's very awkward to suggest your own salary increase when we're talking about holding everything level, even though in the city budget it's very small. But it is an equity issue. This is a commitment for time. I'm missing a work meeting right now because this is important. Other people don't have that flexibility to be able to say, I've got somebody who can handle that for me. So to be able to make serving on the council open to a broader range of residents, I think having something in compensation, it's the same issue with the legislature. They finally raised it, but it's certainly. And the other point too is with city council, once you're elected, you can show up to every meeting and be there till the end, or you can not show up at all. And your performance evaluation is 2 years or 3 years later at your election, so.
Actually, we can't kick, well, that's against the charter. There is
Okay, so
an
there is,
attendance
in the
limit.
legislature, you can like never show up again. And some have done
Although, I
that.
don't know, I feel like, who's keeping.
But it's, how much you put into it is up to you, I'll put
Yeah.
it that way.
Yeah, totally.
But certainly recognizing that this is, I think we've all played with like what we make per hour, and it's $1 or less per hour that we make. So I appreciate you bringing it up. It certainly feels awkward for us to do it. So it's a worthy conversation for those of us who are free to not accept it or donate it is awesome, and then others for whom it makes a difference on whether they feel they can even run because of the commitment. Thank you.
Any comments?
All right,
I'm asking.
sure.
And then, Charlie, I have one thing for you when he's done. I just want to ask you a question.
Jared Wilbur, resident. One thing I wanted to kind of touch base on is the personal property tax. It's a form that gets sent out, and a business will fill in what they have for personal property. And then every year, there's a mailer that goes out. Some people fill it out, some people throw it in the trash. That paper, I don't feel gets checked. Like, I don't think people go around and check, and it's not a huge amount of money the city makes, but it's a good chunk of money. So there's been talk about possibly doing business license renewals yearly. And if that comes into effect, I was just curious what, like, if code enforcement is going to be issuing these, would code enforcement be able to get their personal property checklist from the assessor and actually go on site and check? Because what if a business 15 years ago puts down one computer, 2 desks, but all of a sudden has 15 computers and 20 desks? The city could be missing out on a huge amount of tax revenue from just no real checks and balances on a program that has been established. The flip side of that is, okay, you have a business, let's say you have $300,000 worth of equipment, it's 10 years old. There's also no depreciation in that equipment, and you're still paying above fair market value of equipment that you couldn't sell. To say if you had $300,000 worth of laundry equipment and it's 10 years old, but you're still paying $300,000 worth of personal property tax on that, what is the fair market value of those machines? Like, you can't turn around and sell them. You go out of business, you might get $10 for it, but you're still paying the city. And I know Larry last night was talking about how there's forms, and there might be forms for certain things, but not all things. So I feel like if the city actually established some sort of checks and balances on the personal property in the city with these businesses, I feel like there's a lot more revenue that could be coming out of that program.
Talk to Larry and our tax collector Sue about that piece in code. It's
Good
on the list.
point.
Yeah.
Also a
Thank you.
chance to talk about Betty and Better, the exemption and reimbursement, where fill out the form, do it, and then there are these state programs that would help the businesses with the cost.
Because as far as like the business license aspect, I have no problem paying that, but I feel like the flip side is if you want a business to pay that, I also feel like code enforcement should be making a visit. I see Thomas all the time. Thomas is A1, always shows up, gives me recommendations. How do I stay ahead of the curve? What can I do to help with this and that? And, code enforcement's, they're A1 too. I feel like, though, if you're going to make a business apply every year for this license, maybe do an on-site visit with a checklist. I don't think it would take more than probably 15, 20 minutes to go down and be like, where's your computers? Let me check your plugins, make sure those are GFIs, everything's working with those. It's a whole safety, but also can generate some more revenue from.
Yeah, let me think about that for a second. It just, there's also a level of like kind of checking into people's properties that could create some animosity potentially, and also just the time commitment of that. It's a lot of hours. In a big city like Ellsworth, we're already thinking about short-term registration. It's going to be a lot of hours, so we'd have to kind of factor into work plans. But I'll get back to you, Jared.
One, before we close, Monday night, there is a bid opening, not a bid opening, a paving bid that the council needs to approve. And there was a bid opening that was a public entity before that there were mistakes on. And I had asked you, Charlie, for that information, and you had said to me that you couldn't give me that because that wouldn't be fair to the other counselors, and I'm not trying to get something other counselors can't. But if I'm going to sit here and vote on spending $1.7 million, I'd like to see what the original numbers were and what the original problems were. And for you to block me from that, I don't think that allows me to do my job. So I would like to see that before Monday night.
Yeah, this thing at a memo on this, I think we approved, this is the first time I've heard of this, Steve. I don't know what you're talking about with blocking you from information. Happy to look into it if it's available. This is the first I've heard about it, so happy to look into it.
Well, I did ask, and I have continued to ask.
I think you asked to be in a
Where?
you asked to be in a meeting.
Where? I want to see that information. It's hard for me to vote with taxpayer money without seeing the whole picture of the city. So I'm asking you publicly to provide all of the council with that information. If no one else wants to look at it, that's fine, but I want to see the public bidding that went on and the problems that there was. I want to see the
And
difference
I'm
in the
telling you
numbers.
publicly that I have no problem providing information
Thank you.
like that. I mean, that almost might be a public record, not as a counselor, but the community, and it's one of the reasons Mike
that's-
came up here last council meeting. He was very upfront about
That's
the
different than
mistake
what
in
I
the bid
got
and.
from you behind the scenes. So I'm asking you on camera to provide me all of that information.
Yeah, and I'm telling you publicly, absolutely, that's,
How are you going to deliver that to me?
it could be through email. it could
Email would be great.
Again, like I just
Before I
said,
can vote on Monday night, I need to see that.
I just said that this is the first time I'm hearing of that you want the specific bids from the first bid. That's what you're asking for, Steve, just to be clear.
I'm asking to see the bid form and the bids from the first time around.
Yep, that's
And I'll
easy.
compare it to the second. Because it's
As long
hard
as-
for me to vote if I don't have the whole picture.
As long as it wouldn't be considered like a non-public record, but I assume it would, so, having
If
heard
it was
just
public and it was
first-
open.
Just first heard, exactly, that's why I'm saying, of course, that's pretty basic.
Thank
so-
you.
So I can easily provide that.
Thank you. Anybody else?
I'm going to motion to adjourn,
There we go. Let's get out of here.
if we need to, I don't know.